So if you don't mind, just do a bit of a recap.
Yeah, so since we've been talking about the natural method more explicitly, I think it kind of started a process in my own mind where I've come to appreciate the natural method more compared to, let's say, the structured approach of the Mind Illuminated of Chuladasa, which I was previously basically following.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed that there's a real tendency for me to get obsessed with stages and to kind of do the meditation, and then something happens and I'll try to map it onto the stage. Like, what was that? Um, where does that fit in? And
Mm-hmm.
that's been a huge distraction for me lately, over the last week or so. And I found that I don't actually care. Like, it, like, fundamentally it doesn't matter what stage I'm at, and I'd rather not obsess about it in that way. And I seem to be like, some people seem to be able to hold the concept of stages pretty lightly and have it way in the back of their head maybe, or not present at all when they're sitting, and then when they get up they kind of reflect again, um, in terms of where they're at, what they need to be doing. But for me, it's just one big distraction. And so I've made the resolution like 2 days ago to kind of just try and see what happens if I drop that. And it turns out that sittings is pretty enjoyable. Not that anything like actually changes in the way that I'm less distracted or something, but I don't care so much. I'm not like, oh, a distraction. Nice that I caught it. Let's get back to business. Like, more of that successful attitude.
Very good. Very good. The first thing that I would like to say about that, the organized method, is that the organized method does have some foundation in reality, in the sense that at least one person progressed through the stages that are in that organized method. All right, so it does have some validity to it. And so we have to start with that foundation that these things wouldn't have gotten organized that way unless they had some sort of viability somewhere or another. So the next point is that um, the the things that we need to work on always present themselves in the present moment. And then the question would be, how sharp are you to be able to see that? Because some things are buried really deeply. An example is that there is conceit buried under anger. If there was no I am, then there could no possibility of being I am angry. It's only when one is fairly capable of cleaning out anger can we get to the really deep conceit. But that deep conceit comes right out of the not right out of it is absolutely the expression of um, the self-preservation instinct. Self-preservation instinct expresses itself as I am, because for that primitive programming, I am not means the organism is dead.
Mm.
So you can see how that simplified programming that's there um, becomes a source of frustration and doubt and worry and vexation for people that winds up creating religions. And so it's very, very deeply buried, but it manifests itself in feelings It manifests itself also in materialism. It manifests itself in our relationship with society in the forms of rites, rules, rituals, and it expresses itself in our relationship also to society in the sense of our identity, who we identify with. Now, as you're progressing, you're identifying less and less with the outside world.
Yeah,
You're unlikely now to go to a political rally.
yeah. I've actually
Unlikely.
since we've been talking about politics like a couple of weeks ago, I've actually quit following the news.
Mm.
Um, I'm not sure if that's 100% skillful, but I'm running it as an experiment, and I find that now I'm I'm decently ill informed by now, since I've basically not been getting any news for eh, like maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks, um, and I really appreciate it. It's like people are really upset about things that are happening, and I'm like, huh, I hadn't heard of that. Oh, what stupid thing is Trump doing? And I'm kind of like blissfully unaware. I'm not sure if I can or should keep this up forever, but that's a tangent.
Uh-huh. Um, Ignorance is bliss is a phrase that is relative depending upon our distance from whatever it is that we're ignorant of. And so you can keep the stuff at a distance. Let me ask you this. Do you think that it could be possible that some major disaster has occurred in the past few weeks simply because you weren't watching the news? That if you had been watching the news, that disaster would not have happened.
Yeah, of course not. I don't have any influence over it.
So it doesn't need you. And yet, especially in America, and I imagine in Germany too, they keep telling people how much the government needs them. That in fact, if more and more people just started ignoring the government and ignoring the news and just went about their lives, it would actually have less and less importance. It's the fact that people believe the lie that politics is important, is why it is important.
Yeah,
So, these things actually come out of a primal needs of the human, instinctual needs. But I'm pointing at this only in the sense that only at this level do we have any layers, or only in this position do we have layers. Okay? And the layers then are actually the layers that we have to dig into with the second noble truth.
yeah,
The second noble truth being ignorance, greed, and ill will. Once we dig down to the bottom of greed, ill will, the only way that we can dig down to the bottom of greed and ill will is because we've dug in down to the bottom of ignorance. Hence, that's the first stage. The first three stages or the first three fetters to be abandoned are about knowledge. And that gives us the knowledge to dig through feelings. And then that gives us the tools we need to dig right down to the bottom.
yeah,
Okay? That's the only real structure that we really have to work on because it's so natural. There's no way around it. The question is jhana ever necessary to do that? Because jhana also has its own structure in the sense that obviously second jhana is a bit deeper state than first jhana, and obviously third jhana is a deeper state than second, and obviously and clearly fourth jhana. Now, that does not mean that they're going to be experienced that way, because it's quite possible for someone to slip right into fourth jhana. In fact, in the natural method, what we would call that would be an out of body experience.
Huh.
And that second jhana would be what we would call thoughtless. Well, people have thoughtless moments a lot, especially, in fact, they even have a term for it when people get old. They call it a senior moment. These things are really natural.
I didn't know that phrase. Yeah.
So, um, though the jhana states themselves are natural and people will fall in and out of them, normally the way that they're developed and also the way that they're experienced is with first, second, third, and fourth. Now, how you develop these jhanas is going to have a kind of a natural aspect to it. And a clear example of that is looking at it from the perspective of anapanasati itself being an organized method, because there are four steps associated with body, four steps associated with feeling, four steps associated with mind, and four steps associated with mental objects. By using the word step, I'm already secretly implanting the idea that each one of these are stages, but now I interrupt that directly with showing you, hey, can anybody go into the meditation hall and bring just the body? Or bring in just the feelings and leave the other stuff asleep somewhere? Can you come in? No, you've got to bring that whole show in, and therefore you have to deal with that whole show one by one as it as each act plays out
Yeah.
on the stage.
So is it a matter of just being present for whatever comes up, and then one of these different aspects is whatever I have to work or get to work with in that moment?
Um, yes, except that present sounds so soft.
Hmm.
I would prefer to use the word on guard, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
If you're really good at guard duty, then you'll be very present with your wife when she's arguing with you.
Yeah. So this is in terms of hindrances that are likely to come up.
hmm So on guard duty means that we're actually practicing a skill, to where merely presence means it's kind of magical, or that it kind of happens to us, or that a better way of talking about it would be that it's the result of the skill.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, yes, the question is, can you be present? The answer is, if you're trained in guard duty to
Yeah.
watch the mind, then
I'm
yes, then you can be present.
I'm getting better at it.
That's the whole point of building this skill.
Yeah.
Congratulations. In fact, as I see um, older students, those that are hanging in there, every one of them is successful. I have not had, except for one failure, someone who was kept trying too hard. He kept wanting something out of it. He was
Yeah.
practicing far too much. He would take everything in way far direction.
Yeah.
And so therefore, because he wanted too much,
Yeah.
that's that's a very, very common habit that in fact I almost always have been calling it a Western habit. And now I have a student from central China, and he's got that.
Has he been living in the West for a number of years?
I don't think well, his English is very good. I haven't asked him about that, but he has done both a Goenka and a Mahasi retreat. And that it's in the Mahasi retreats where students pick up a really try hard attitude. And I think that it actually is a try hard attitude. It's almost like that they're expecting and intending to have a great struggle, and that the struggle may be only that, only a struggle, that they may never get a payoff, but at least they'll get a pat on the head. Look how hard I tried. I think that that's kind of an element in Buddhism coming from the West, but it's really human.
Yeah. I've actually been like this theme of trying too hard has been a major theme in the last week for me, um, because I realized I was trying too hard. So, but in a really subtle way. Um, so I'm not entirely sure of this, and I'm looking for your opinion on this. So I noticed that, or I think that I noticed that I was kind of trying to force my attention to stay on the breath by kind of power of will or something. Like, I really want this, you stay there, kind of thing. And I've recently discovered a way of being with the breath in a much more relaxed way, um, that's much more open and, um, yeah, like a wide open, relaxed awareness, as opposed to like really um, zeroing in or laser like focus. It's much more of a, there's the breath, but it's like part of this huge, huge picture. Um,
Exactly. All right. Let me use this analogy. It's kind of it, it seems more reminiscent of what I've seen in cowboy movies, so I'll give it a kind of a cowboy flair. And the idea is that the captain is intently watching this group down in the group of Indians at the bottom, and he's got his lenses focused, and he's watching them, and he's really watching them, and he's really watching them, while one of them sneaks right up behind him.
yeah.
Okay, so in that regard, that's actually that focus is what brings on jhana. And that's exactly not what we are looking for, because the first jhana does not have that kind of focus, and it allows us to be here now in the present moment. But we're basically open and alert and awake, because we're kind of on guard duty, or as you say, present, so that it's extremely unlikely anybody's going to sneak up behind you. Though it's possible. One of the things that I've made myself as sort of a toy to play with is that when anyone comes into the yard, I know it. And now I've gotten good enough to where I know that Tam is coming even before she fully rounds the corner that I can see. And so that's really good. It feels really good to be able to have your awareness out, open. That that sight. That I notice that with dogs also. That even though they're sleeping, they have that ear open. They're listening.
Mm.
Okay, so this is kind of the difference between that kind of open awareness that's right here, right now. The second kind of, which would not be awareness, would be lost in space or lost in the head and just thinking about something.
Yeah.
And then the third one would be really focused on something, whether it be meditation or whether it be code. That Willie and I have talked about doing that, and others. Those who write computer code know that you can definitely get lost in the code. That the building could burn down and you don't want to leave the code. Mathematicians get that way too. The bell rings and the teacher is still writing stuff on the board and talking about it, and the class is empty. He turns around and they're all gone. Okay, so that kind of focus is the kind of focus that is needed for jhana, but it's not the kind of focus that's needed to be ready for anything. Now, what happens, this is a little bit advanced, but what happens is that after you have what is called vipassana, or actually now that you have this open awareness, you can then with that, and with actually not a lot of energy, go into the four jhanas without having to work at it, that they become natural.
Huh.
Naturally, they call them vipassana jhanas.
Oh,
You
okay.
probably even heard that expression.
Yeah.
But that's because you know your own mind now well enough to know that, oh, all I have to do is turn perception off and stay at bare basic consciousness, and I've got fourth jhana wired.
Yeah, I haven't been able to do that yet. Looking forward to it though. That sounds awesome. Um, I
Well,
did.
that's what comes from the natural approach, is because we actually understand what we're doing rather than having to practice it rote.
Yeah, you mean just blindly following steps?
Or blindly following steps. Exactly. That's what the organized method is, as though it's based on wisdom. The students wind up blindly following steps, thinking that the following the steps are going to get what they need out of it, when in fact, what the whole real intention is for you to wake up and see what's going on, to be on
Yeah.
guard for it, so that as you start to purify the mind, it goes a little deeper and a little deeper through the purification process.
Yeah, I actually found that hanging out in this mode of wide open awareness, but still focused on the breath, but focused more not in a not like tightly focused or intensely focused, more just resting attention on the breath, kind of just putting
Mm-hmm.
it there, but not investigating intensely or really um, zeroing in on it. That is really pleasurable because the breath also feels different when I do this. So
Yes, yes. Enjoy the breath.
yeah,
Enjoy,
so
enjoy.
the way I kind of found out about this, and I'm really unsure about this. I'm not sure if I'm imagining something or I'm talking myself into something, but I found that when I include also feelings of the body and sounds and like maybe a touch of air on the skin, like all those peripheral sensations, when I include those more, the sensation of the breath changes. So it becomes more, it's way less intense, it's less crisp, it's more of a flowing, smooth, dark, like a muted color palette. Um, it feels like, do you know the feeling when you're breathing in really cold air? That's what
Yes.
That's what it feels like when I'm really focusing on the breath. Like it's really detailed. It's really crisp and clear. And then when I include more things, that kind of crispness goes away and it
Mm-hmm.
feels more like breathing in warm air. It's it doesn't have all that detail. Is that any like have you ever heard something like this? Because
Oh, yes. Oh, sure. Yes, 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 yes. And uh, if you can look at the progressions of the anapanasati, then you can see exactly how that works. That by watching the in breaths and the out breaths, that's when you can get really focused. But then stage three, which you can either go to because you've really worked hard on the first two stages and you're doing it in the organized way, or you can kind of skip around and go right to the third step and include the body right away. But the sutta says experiencing the whole body. Now, in one of the translations, the one with from Bhikkhu Bodhi put in brackets of the breath, and Tanisaro had objections to that, pointed it out that it's not in the sutta, and asked Bodhi to take it out of the first edition. I think they're now at the fourth, fifth, or even sixth edition now, and it's never been removed. So, when we say the whole body, either it's the whole body, period, which is the way that the Goenka method does it, or it's the whole body of breath, which would be down to the bottom of the waist. Now, one of the things that we know about Kundalini, or actually the word in Pali would be Piti, would be that sometimes the lower extremities of the body become vibrantly alive. And in that regard, since you haven't done a Goenka retreat, you've done the Metta retreat. I don't know what their experience was, but Goenka makes sure that the whole body is included in it, and they actually go through a system of scanning the
Yeah.
body so that the body really, really wakes up. This is extraordinarily valuable because that waking up of the body winds up making it, uh, in a way, kind of like a natural antenna that is better tuned, or let us say, more receptive of data. It's almost like when we're little kids that the body is a source of pain. We fall down, we hurt ourselves, we gain a few skills, and then we don't pay much attention to the body and the body sensations, only if it hurts.
Mm.
And so, because of that, we don't. I mean, we've got so much else to pay attention to. I mean, the culture just takes 100% focus for a little child to figure out what the heck is going on. Where am I? And so we begin to lose this total immersion in the body that a practice like Goenka's method will bring us back to. Now, I do not have both experiences. I have been with Goenka and done many of his retreats. And one of the benefits, if I could call it a benefit from him, would be this body awareness, to just be here in the body and as part of the be here now complex. Because the body is, in fact, got more neurons throughout the body. I mean, and look how many different kind of receptions there are. If there's an ant crawling anywhere on the body, you should know it. Any animal on the body, you should be aware of it. Um, Aware of breezes, hot, cold, not only hot and cold in general, but hot and cold in various parts of the body, can be localized. And that the tips of the fingers are, in fact, there's so many neurons there, perhaps you don't know about it, but in the old days, when everybody worked on his own automobile, everybody became a mechanic. Everybody had to learn to see with their hands. Because if you're going to be up and under and put something bolt in that dashboard, you got to know what that place is and what it feels like in the sense of knowing what it looks like and be able to feel that bolt to find out, the threads and get them started and being able to turn that thing in. That takes a lot of work that's in the body that we don't normally pay much attention to. Even the guys that are doing that art that I just was mentioning They're not paying attention to the fact that look what marvelous things these hands are. They can actually see. They're just doing it.
Yeah.
And another thing that's really interesting is that if the mechanic busts a knuckle or does some damage to his hand, he'll let it bleed with the oil while he continues with his work. Doesn't mean anything. It's only when he goes into the house and washes his hands and start pays attention to the wound that he'd inflicted on himself, only then does it start to hurt.
Yeah.
Because that was what happened to me when I was a teenager, and come to think of it, I've talked to several people about that, and they say, "You're right about that. I wonder why." Because of the mind and the way that we focus. Everybody's afraid of pain, and yet the fact when the mind is focused on the job that the hand is doing, it can be injured. People get in battle like that. In fact, possibly the funniest example of that is the Holy Grail, where this guy, this knight, gets one arm cut off and then another and then a leg, and he's hopping around on one leg, and they cut that one off too, and now he's on the ground, but he's sitting up, and he says, "Where you going? Fight like a man." He's so focused on the battle that even though he's got his limbs cut off, he's not paying attention to the pain at all. That happens in battle, where we just let it go. That happens actually in the boxing ring almost every fight. The
Yeah.
kinds of things that anybody would go rushing to the doctor for, they just let it slide in the boxing ring because they're focused on what they're doing. If that's true, then the Goenka method has some enormous value with being able to sit for long periods of time, like an hour, in what they call strong determination sittings, to learn to deal with bodily sensation. Those that are successful at doing that become lions just because they know that they can handle the body. They're very sensitive to the body. Every little thing is available to them, but nothing is way too loud. It's almost like the way that we've gotten is that we're not paying attention at all to the soft uh, uh, music that the body is playing. That we have to wait until it gets really loud before we're paying any attention to it. And so, if we can bring it down to a level to where we're paying attention to it very closely, then even if we get a really, really big injury, it's not going to be freaking out with pain. And I've also discovered something else quite remarkable about that, and that is that much of the pain that people experience in a trauma like an automobile accident or whatnot is actually fear of the future. Oh,
Yeah.
poor me. Oh, what's going to happen to me? And so, with all of that emotion mixed in with the sensation of the body, and they wind up freaking out over the pain when in fact almost all of the suffering was mentally generated.
Yeah. So, do you have any specific experience of that phenomenon of the breath changing, like the feeling of the breath changing as a like effect of including more bodily sensations?
Yes, exactly. Thanks for bringing me back to that. So, when you're focusing on the breath only and on itself, you're generally only focusing on certain small areas or aspects of the body.
Yeah.
And
So,
hence
so
you're
I
going
just
to
I just
wake
go
that
for the
stuff
nose.
up. Exactly so. So you're going to have very strong, intense sensations there because that's where you're focusing.
Yeah.
Once you take the focus away from there and bring it to a more general focus, then you're still going to have the breath and you're still going to have that area, but you're also going to have almost a swirl because the whole idea is to not focus on any one particular thing. That in fact, as soon as you find yourself focusing on something, you let that go and move on. And you can do that with the eyes, you can do that with hearing, you can do that with music. Pay closely attention to a particular instrument for a moment and then let it go and bring it back to the more wider. Um, so there's many different ways of looking at it like that. But as we focus in, that's that kind of concentration is an extraordinarily valuable tool. But while we're practicing it, we're not practicing another valuable tool. So they have to kind of be in balance so that you've got really open, good uh, awareness, so that you know when someone's around, so that you know. Um, Here's an example. Perhaps you do this on your own, but I don't know. But here in Thailand, I have the opportunity to experience a shift in temperatures, a sudden shift of temperature. Why is that? Because the weather suddenly shifts. Along with that is also the barometric pressure. So as that temperature goes down, the pressure goes down also. And that's a really amazing feeling to actually recognize, wow, whoa, oh, it was the barometric pressure that changed. I feel
Huh.
it's so you can actually experience these things when you're in the body. Can feel barometric pressures. You can feel subtle changes in temperature. One of the things actually that I would recommend, but not this month, not in Germany, to practice without a shirt, to let the natural breezes blow, so that you can be aware
Yeah.
of them, the complex movement of the air around the body.
Yeah. It's getting to freezing temperatures at night, so I'll postpone that.
Well, you can also play the Tibetan game. I mean, how long have you lived in Germany anyway?
All my life.
Have you ever been cold before?
Yeah.
What is about it that is it that you just don't like it?
Yeah.
Well, wouldn't you have a happier life if you actually got to like it? I mean, there it is.
Yeah. Um, I guess the way to getting that result, I'm on board, but the way of getting there seems pretty unpleasant. Like even the
Well, take your
idea of
jacket off first and do it in the t-shirt today, and tomorrow try it without the t-shirt.
yeah, I've been I've been experimenting with cold showers as well, but
You're a braver man than I, Gunga Din. I like the cold showers here in the tropics, but I don't know about Germany. No, no, I've done that before.
yeah,
I've done it
I
before.
found out that in winter cold water from the tap is really cold here. It's hurts quite a bit. Um, yeah. Anyway, so I found out that, or I think I found out, and I'm just emphasizing that I'm really experimenting with this because I wasn't sure if I was just spinning some story in my mind. Um, if I use that, or if I get to that place where I include more bodily sensations and more sounds and basically everything else, and let that in and kind of even invite it in and even kind of focus on it for a little bit before coming back to the breath, it seems that I can keep my attention on the breath better. And it also, um, there's a tendency for me to kind of revert back or to collapse back into that like very laser like focus on the breath. That's what my mind naturally has been doing all the time. And I think that it's making me pretty prone to distractions. And it's also making me prone to dullness and sleepiness because
Mhm.
by focusing in so much, it seems that in the beginning my sits go really well, and then they kind of fall apart, and I kind of everything like I get really distracted, and then I get really dull. And
All right. So Would you say then that there comes a point in time when the mind is sharp, but then it gets tired? And as it gets tired, that's when all of that stuff begins to happen?
Yeah, I guess so. Um,
Okay.
but
So,
compared in that new mode that I've kind of discovered in air quotes, um, that doesn't tend to happen. It's more of a relaxed, like I can keep up a pretty consistent level of like that falling apart of like just sliding into really bad distractions to the point where I'm basically not even meditating anymore. That doesn't tend to happen.
all right. All right. Here's a couple of questions for you. How long do you sit before when you're sitting with a strong uh, let us call it one pointed concentration? How many minutes is it before things fall apart? 20 minutes?
Yeah,
30 minutes? Something like that? And
yeah.
how long do you sit altogether?
Right now I'm doing mostly 60-minute sets.
And you're
Um,
saying that for 60 minutes you can sit with open awareness,
I mean, it
more or less.
there's still a fluctuation, and it tends to be better in the beginning, but I can also like realize that I've been sliding off and then bring myself back. Whereas previously it was like an unstoppable process where once I had slid into like this really distracted mode, basically that's it for the rest of the sit.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so I can keep it up pretty well. At least that's what it feels like. I'm really open to the idea that I'm just fooling myself here, and but yeah, that's what it feels like.
No, what we're doing is we're taking the scientific approach of looking at the functions of the mind. One of the things that students have reported is that when they um, after they're sitting for a long time and the mind begins to get tired, is when it's more difficult to do the practice. But when they understand that that's what's happening, that's when we do a rededication
Yeah,
of deep breathing to make sure that the mind is oxygenated, to go back to the breath and start breathing really well, really, maybe as many as 10 strong, deep breaths. Something on the order of when your fingers start to tingle, you know that you've taken enough deep breaths. And that should
okay.
get the mind oxygenated again so that you can go back to the kind of breathing that you were doing before.
Yeah. The way it feels to me is focusing single pointedly on the breath at the nose is kind of taking too much processing power. It's kind of focusing the mind in so much that it kind of, I don't know if it just gets tired quicker, or I also have the feeling that by kind of not having any processing power left for whatever distraction may come up, it catches me off guard. It's like I'm so much with the breath that kind of something comes up and it really takes me away. Instead of just like,
Exactly right. All right. Let me rephrase that. What you just said is that when you're tightly focused, some hindrance can arise in the mind and you don't catch it until it gets really strong. But when you have open awareness, then even when the hindrance is quite weak, you can still catch it and then come back in time.
yeah,
And I see you nodding your head, so you agree that's the a way of interpreting it. That's actually also the case. I believe you. In fact, that fits in exactly with my own understanding. All
yeah,
right, that open awareness. In fact, you can catch that stuff quicker. That's the whole point of it.
yeah,
Okay, so even if the best student, in the Zendo, capable of second jhana, he's still going to be the one who gets whacked when the teacher comes up behind him and he doesn't straighten his back or let the teacher know somehow that he knows the teacher's there. So if a mind is full of hindrances, you don't know the teacher's there. If you're sitting in first jhana and you're absolutely alert and aware when the teacher steps behind you, you know he's there. And you're going to have some subtle movement, and he's looking for that subtle movement. And when he checks you out and he says, yeah, you know I'm here, you don't get whacked. But the guy who is in deep, deep second jhana, he's going to get whacked because he doesn't know that the teacher's there. In that regard, we can call this the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for is this sweet spot, that first jhana, so that we can have the mind, that we can apply it and keep the mind focused on whatever it is that we want to keep it focused on. But we're not going to keep it focused on anything too tightly so that we miss out on anything. This is why I give the analogy of being able to read a book. When the mind is unfocused, then when you start reading a passage, then the first thing that you read, you start thinking about, and as you read on, you realize that you're not reading what was there, that you were thinking while the eyes were moving, as opposed to being able to actually read what's there because you are interested and curious and you're reading it and taking it in as it goes down, and you know sentence by sentence and paragraph by paragraph that you're understanding what's being said. That's the quality of the first jhana that we really want to use so that we can apply that to the book of life. Chapter 1 through 9,000 is the Four Noble Truths.
Okay. Yeah. I've actually been slipping into these. Actually, a lot of different pleasant things have been coming up in the last week since we talked. And I attribute that in part to my refocusing on pleasantness and success and so one thing that's been happening with this more inclusive focus on the breath, this more open focus on the breath, is I can get in a zone where it's almost effortless to stay with the breath for a while, where I only have to do this really small thing, what I don't know what the name for it is, like exert only the smallest amount of mental energy to keep the mind there, and it's really nice. It feels like one phrase I heard was like sitting in the eye of a hurricane, where it's really quiet, but all these things are going, like you're really keenly aware of all the things happening around you, and it's just it takes almost no effort to stay there, and it's really nice, and it's really quiet, and it's relaxing, and it's really alert as well. It's not like sinking into dullness and sleep. So that's been pretty nice. I don't know what the name for that is, but I've been trying to stay in that way for as long as I can, and then eventually I get distracted and find myself mind wandering and try to get back.
Good. That's exactly the state that you want to be in. In fact, we could also talk about that in the sense of the third noble truth of experiencing that state, that state of freedom from hunger, not wanting anything at all,
Yeah.
not being conditioned by anything. That's what the Buddha and Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, actually, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa calls it a little nibbana. But I guess for you right there, it would actually be a little bit longer than nibbana, so we could call that a mid-range nibbana.
Working my way up the range. Yeah.
So that's really good. I'm glad to hear these things are happening, and that you've changed this focus, and that you're beginning to gain great benefit from it.
Yeah. One thing that I really like as well is PT is coming up almost every sit again. So um, I take that as a good sign because I mean it's one of the factors of first jhana. So um, yeah, it's really one thing that's been really nice is kind of so for me PT is usually in the face. It's kind of energy swirls and pressure in the face. Um, and
Would you be
then
willing to believe that these sensations in the body that you're calling and describing as pity are things that happen on a regular and normal basis that people are just not aware of them? But now that they're happening, you really tune into them.
I mean
It,
kind of, but they can get pretty intense and pretty weird and bizarre at times. Um, it's hard to believe that you could be unaware when that's happening. It usually grabs my
oh,
attention immediately.
well, if you won't buy that story, then will you buy this one? That these feelings, once you're able to experience them, you can actually talk yourself into them and bring them up quite quickly.
Yeah, that I've experienced.
That, in fact, just by thinking about pity after you're
Yeah,
sitting for a while, it starts to come up. You can
yeah.
bring it up.
Or even just focusing on an area where it typically comes up will bring it up sometimes. Um, yeah,
Okay. Well, go with that. Go with the fact that you have some control over that. That, in fact, by thinking about it becoming more intense, it can be more intense. You can actually learn to play with it. That's what you've been doing anyway. And that's, in fact, the thing that I like the best. And I should at least point that out is that you're beginning to be very playful with your practice.
yeah,
That's hard to do when you're following a set of
yeah,
strict rules,
yeah. I
but
came
it's
to
quite natural in the
yeah,
natural method.
yeah. I came to the point where I was kind of almost looking for permission to let go of the stages, to kind of just go with what I wanted to go with.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, and so there was this other experience um, where I had a like I had an episode of an experience that was pretty short and didn't last for a long while, but it was really, really intense. Um, I'm not sure how significant this is, but um, I'm thinking that it might be significant. So the feeling was again in the facial area where um, it felt like my head was getting filled with warm cement or concrete. Like it was getting really warm and dense and heavy, but it was also like an energetic sensation. So looking back, I'm guessing it's probably like really strong PT in the face, like really strong pressure.
Hmm.
But it was like mostly the front part. So like this area here in the front, um, and there was this rush of positive energy coming up from the chest, like an upward thrust of like just energy streaming up for a moment or a
Hmm.
couple of moments, like a short while, like a rush of excitement and joy or something. And then I noticed, I don't know how exactly, but that I can, this feeling I had in my face, I realized that I could immerse my whole head in it. And then I kind of did that, like through like my own action. I kind of pushed my head into it. It felt like maybe like pushing the head into like warm water or something.
Hmm.
and then it spread like to the side of my face over the ears until my whole head was in it, and it was like extremely intense at that point. Um, and yeah, that's it didn't last long because it kind of freaked me out because I've never experienced that before. It was really pleasant, but um, my mind immediately started analyzing and stuff, and then I kind of fell out of it again. Um, so
Well, when you start analyzing, that's exactly what happens. Then you'll lose it. If you start thinking
yeah,
about it, you'll lose it. If you still focus on the feelings themselves, it would have been possible for you to have filled the whole body with that warm, heavy sensation. I wouldn't go so far as to use the word cement.
yeah, I was just looking for a way, a metaphor to
You
describe.
got me. I got it. I got it. I got it. All the cement I've ever filled in with was had sand in it.
Yeah, I've
But
never actually
yours
worked
wasn't
with
sandy.
cement. Maybe it's like maybe it could have been like warm cookie dough or
Yeah, now we're getting there. All right.
like warm maple syrup or
Hmm.
warm honey or something, like a dense, heavy feeling. So is that anything you recognize, or is that just something I should disregard?
Well, like I was about to say, that if you had continued on with that in the Goenka style, you could have filled the whole body with that particular sensation. Now, whatever sensation that you had was an actual, ordinary, real sensation that you and your body were cooperating with, so that you were directing the sensations of the body, which is actually quite possible to do only when you recognize that it's a two-way communication. Normally, we think of the communication is the sensations tell the brain, I itch, I hurt, I feel heavy, I feel warm, etc., like that. And that's not the case. That the mind, in fact, has a great deal of control, not only of feelings and emotions, liking and not liking, but it has control over sensation also. And so you're actually beginning to experience that. That you thought that you said that you could change it a little bit, and you found that you can't. That you in fact could. And so, what I'm suggesting is that if you have sensations like that are warm and pleasant and glowing and perhaps a heavy kind of feeling to it, that you can work with that down the neck, down into the chest. In fact, you could start to go so far as to say, as you're breathing in, you breathe in that warm, delicious pudding or cookie dough kind of air. You've got a new kind of air to breathe now, and as you breathe that in, you feel it through. In fact, I like it. It's good stuff. Bringing up goosebumps on the arm too.
Yeah.
So, yes, we can. We can get those sensations. We can work with that, with the imagination, or with the experience of bringing feelings on. Um, oh, a very, very clear example of that was after I understood what was going on, I was able to change my mind. I used to have a whole lot of difficulty having blood drawn. That was the one that was the most difficult because they couldn't ever find my veins. I mean, I've had them move from my armpits down to my wrist, and then from the wrist down to the leg, and um, that avoiding the pain, blacking out. I mean, the whole 9 yards of it. But the trick is to invite the needle, to invite it. To say, come on, guy, go get what you're looking for. Go on in there and do your business, and we'll watch out here what's going on. In other words, I was a victim of the needle in the beginning. And because of that, I was victimized by the needle. By changing the attitude to become a lion about that blood, now they have a lot of trouble getting it, but I can laugh. In fact, the last time they did it, she kept thumping the vial to try to get some more blood, and she only was able to get that much, but she said that was enough, and the vial is probably that big. She only got about 20% of it. Most people just, it pops right in there. For me, it's not so easy to do. But the point is that I'm no longer afraid of it. And because of that, it doesn't hurt at all. Not even the entry sting is actually a painful sting. It just doesn't hurt. And that all has to do with mental attitude. But as a child, we're afraid of it. And we grow up afraid of it. And I'm glad that I was able to change my attitude, because that just an attitude change has removed a tremendous amount of suffering. So, if we can do that at that one particular point, at that one particular level, then you can also you can do that with, in general, especially while you're sitting in deep meditation, that you can do that with rapture, with pity, that you can feel the way that you want to feel. That in fact, the body will become to feel weightless. You can feel like you're flying, or you feel like the body is like 50 or 60 feet tall. Like you were a giant statue. We've got a lot of giant statues of Buddhas here, and I imagined every monk that he felt that way from time to time. You become enormous, and partly that has to do with the fact that the proprioceptive bodily sensation system is altered in its perception, so that we feel weightless, feel buoyant. And that it's a very, very pleasant feeling.
Yeah.
This is what's characteristic of the fourth jhana, by the way. That's why they call it infinite space. And when you read it in the scriptures, don't go for that word infinite, because the whole concept that we have for the word infinite did not exist in the time of the Buddha. That the correct interpretation is boundless. And when you use the word boundless, then it starts to make sense, because we're saying that the boundaries of the body begin to break down.
Yeah.
Or consciousness, we begin to focus really on consciousness, and so the boundaries around consciousness begin to break down. It's not infinite. Not in the sense that it goes out to Venus and circles the planet taking photos or something. And when people hear infinite consciousness, that's what they kind of to think about. But in general, you can see it as an out-of-the-body experience, which many religions think very highly of. And so it becomes a completely mental experience. But that, like I said, you can experience that in two ways. One is through the hard work of settling the mind down into that. And the other one is using the map of Paticca Samuppada and your own ability to focus. And you can put yourself into that place fairly directly after you have the skills of the Dhamma. And so this is why even Mahasi will talk about Vipassana jhanas, because they're if anything, one is kind of substitute for the other one, but the substitute is better than the first because of the cost-benefit ratio. But the good one takes enormous effort over a long period of years, and the other one kind of comes naturally after you understand what you're doing.
is it the case that the type of jhana that you're advocating, especially first jhana, is really light? So not as deep or not as intense?
It's not intense at all. It's just being able to focus. People go in and out of the first jhana all the time. Coders could not code if they could not do it in first jhana. They've got to pay attention to what they're doing. Race car drivers had better be in first jhana, and it better actually be in the second jhana, because the kind of thoughts that you have in the first jhana may cause you to have a wreck. And the humans have been doing that for many, many centuries, way back when we were hunters and gatherers. There we are, a couple of guys with a spear, and we see a boar. I'd better keep my eye on that boar. While that boar is chasing through the jungle, I'm going to have to chase right after it through the jungle, and I'd better not lose sight of him, or I'll never see him again. That's second jhana.
Huh. So the reason I brought up this experience was that I thought it was an experience of piti and sukha both coming together for me. So I interpreted that rush of energy coming up from the chest as sukha. And I thought it might have been some sort of first jhana territory experience, but I'm getting the feeling that we're on totally different wavelengths of what first jhana even is. So I guess I'm still not really getting.
You could think of it, jhana, as a territory or a land. It's not an event. Okay? That as you develop first jhana, you will actually be able to develop your rapture. And the hallmark of the distinction between the first and second jhana is whether or not you're capable of bringing the mind to a state to where the mind stops, or that it rests in an empty space. Now, generally, what happens with every new student is that as soon as they reach that, and then they wait a minute verifying it, and then they say, and then you agree because that was second jhana, but they actually pull themselves out of it by
Yeah,
being able to recognize it, and they may not have it again for a while. And that
yeah,
then it was only lasting 4, 5, 6 seconds is all it lasted. Okay, but there are techniques that you can use with different meditations. With if you're using anapanasati, the place to move from first jhana to second jhana is between the out breath and the next in breath. So that with the idea that as you breathe out, when you finish breathing out, the mind will stop. That you slow the mind down, and as you stop breathing, the mind stops. And so long as you can hold the breath and watch the breath empty, the mind will stay empty also. This is a good way to develop the second jhana.
oh,
With the idea, I'm not going to let the mind start up until I start to breathe again. They will come back together. And so in that gap, and so eventually then you will get to the point, can I take a second breath without interrupting this empty state between the thoughts? Naturally, if you think about that while you're in second jhana, you just pulled yourself out of it.
yeah. But in terms of getting the mind fit for work, um, it doesn't sound like there needs to be, or that it would even be beneficial to have like strong piti and sukha present, because that's kind of
And
distracting.
with strong piti and with strong sukha and with the thoughtless mind, it's very hard to do the Dhamma. We've moved beyond. We've gone too far. We've got too much concentration. We've missed the sweet spot. We've gone over the edge.
Yeah,
So what we need to do is to not haul ourselves back, but rather relax back into allowing the mind to start back up, so that now the mind can evaluate what was going on.
mm,
So you can think about what this is. So you can begin to understand the mind better. That's the value of second jhana, not sitting in it, but visiting it long enough so that you can recognize the distinction between first and second jhana. After that, I don't see much other than um, that you will naturally fall into the other jhanas. The question is, well, will you recognize that jhana as a jhana?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was kind
Because,
of trying to do with that question. Like, could that have been like something in the first genre land there? Because it's difficult for me to map what happens in my sits to the words that people use, like rapture,
okay,
joy, all that kind of stuff.
so the for rapture and joy, the distinctions between first and second jhana are more difficult and nuanced. But the clear distinction between first and second jhana is that in first jhana you can direct the mind,
Yeah,
and in second jhana you can bring in the thoughts completely to a close. You can
yeah.
stop it.
I guess the question that's more relevant for me is something even first jhana, or is it just something unrelated? Is it just PT coming up, or is it maybe just nothing at all and just imagining stuff? You know?
No, the piti is real. If it was not real, then the Buddha wouldn't had it in the, and there wouldn't be so much literature about it.
Yeah. I guess just having PT present is not the same as being in first jhana. You know what I mean?
Right. They're not how to say it. First off, the feeling the rapture does not have to be intense. It can be just nice to have a nice feeling in the body and that you have pleasure. That sukha and piti are almost always used together and are synonymous. Sukha is pleasure. And sukha, in fact, is the opposite, even in the Pali language, of dukkha. Dukkha, sukha. They're the
Yeah.
opposites. All right. So if you were sitting in a state of sukha and the body feels good, see, what you're doing is you're focusing on the intensity of the bodily sensations rather than the qualities of that if you do feel good in the body and you do feel good in the mind, then that feel goodness in the mind and the body good feelings both have to do with the fact that the mind is free from the hindrances, that
Yeah.
it's a state of relief.
Mhm.
It's a state of relief. Um, so that we feel relieved that we have a mind that's fit for work, and the joy also is there partly because we have been developing it as a skill, as well as the fact that it's just a pure relief from the
Mhm.
hindrances. So
Mhm.
those two things work together to give a great deal of pleasure. That pleasure then is probably a little more important than the piti or the rapture or the bodily sensations. But for some reason, the jhana dudes, especially when they connect it with kundalini, they think, oh, that's the goal. Oh, I got to go have a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
Where in fact it's not so important, not so important. Getting the mind into that first jhana state so that it's fit for work, so that you feel good and comfortable and happy and relaxed. And now ask yourself, if I could be in that state all the time, wouldn't that be good enough?
Yeah. It would
So all I
definitely.
need to do is to guard that state, is
Okay.
to get
Yeah.
it get
Yeah.
into that state and guard it so that I can maintain that state. Because the mind is fit for work. We can see what's going on. We can see the things as hindrances coming up as hindrances, and we can throw them out before they invade the mind and remain. And by doing this, that's what gives us the quality of that first knowledge that the Buddha talks about. And that first knowledge is no matter how obstructed the mind is, I can throw it out and be here now. I can be here in this present moment, see things as they are now. So that's that generally open state that we're talking
Yeah.
about, not the super focused state. But the be here now state is a general openness, and it has the quality of being on guard. But the being on guard is fairly easy to do.
Yeah. I've been getting the way the thing you're describing now. I've been moving closer to that in the last week, definitely. So I'm getting periods of that where, yeah, but I wouldn't have thought that that was first jhana. It just it's um it's way more subtle, and in a sense it's underwhelming. Like the way I imagine first jhana is like way more fireworks, and um, not that it's not nice to be in this really calm,
Mm.
quiet, relaxed, happy place. That's really nice, but it's nice in a really different way than I was imagining.
All right. You use the word fireworks. Let me explain something to you. Do you know what a pyrotechnician is? Do you think he cares about the pyrotechnics, or do you think he's more concerned with the setup, making sure all the wiring is correct, making sure the computers are on time, making sure everything is choreographed, and once he flips the switch, he could care less about the fireworks. He didn't have much control. In fact, he better leave
Yeah,
that place. All right. So, when you're talking about fireworks, yes, the fireworks are there, but the fireworks are there only because we see the show as fireworks in the beginning. Later, we just see them as part of the show and it becomes subtle. Not fireworks anymore. They're just part of the job. So in a way, we become that pyrotechnician is no longer interested in bombs bursting in air. We're much more interested in the wiring that sets that stuff off.
yeah. I guess for me it's a matter of just having a mistaken or a different definition or interpretation or imagination of what people are talking about when they say, and then I entered first jhana. And in my
Uh huh.
mind, it's like this super advanced yogi floating off on a cloud towards like a,
I know.
like the pearly gates or something.
Yeah.
And the thing you're describing is more of a, you're just sitting there quiet, the body feels nice, maybe there's some PT going on, thoughts still come, distractions still come up, but then you kind of recognize them very quickly and just um, come back to what you're doing.
Which is
That's
nothing at all. Come back
yeah.
to not doing much of anything. Exactly. Enjoying the moment, enjoying the present moment,
You can see how
focusing
that's
on.
underwhelming when you're thinking of floating off on a cloud towards the pearly gates.
Or you can think of that as floating off on clouds towards the pearly gates.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah, the metaphor applies if you want it to, but it's still just a nice, really pleasant. If this is it, then this is good enough. My only job is to make sure I can be like this all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that would be
because
that. Go ahead.
because when we're in that state, it's good enough. It's when we're no longer in that state that we start hoping for things. Because in that state, we're really satisfied. This is good enough. This is nice.
Yeah.
This is progress.
So
That quality of satisfaction, the quality of bringing yourself to this present moment, has a real quality of satisfaction, of contentment, of completeness. Um, some of the words that they use in the Pali translations into English are a little bit misleading. One of them is the word tranquility, or tranquilizing the body. A much better word would be to relax, because that's what the word actually means. Just relax, relax.
Yeah. On that note of relaxing, I've found that my sitting posture, I think, is really holding me back because it tends to produce a lot of tension the more this sit wears on. So especially like longer sits of an hour, there tends to be a lot of tension, especially in the back, like lower back, upper back, shoulders area.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to be in that relaxed frame of mind when
All right.
you have to
Here's
struggle to,
what
you know.
here's what they would recommend for you to do at Watsuan Moke. And that is that during that time when the back is getting tense like that, it's okay to actually change your posture up to the point of standing up and standing for a moment and then sitting back down. And let that little bit of movement do the unwinding that was building up in your posture. Now, various temples will say various things, but generally, it's not recommended to find a straight edge or the back of something to prop your back up to, because then we can make that into a crutch. It's better just to sit, and then when we have tension, to stand up for a moment or two, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Take 2 or 3 deep breaths, enjoy the standing posture, let all of the tension slide out of the back, and when it feels good, then you can sit back down and sit again.
Yeah, that's way different to the Goenka style strong determination sitting though.
I know, and I'm a student of both houses.
So my reaction, my immediate reaction is that moving while sitting is unskillful because it's just
It's
feeding into.
intentional.
Oh yeah, right.
It's
Oh,
intentional. You might even want to find a way of doing it in a stylized way to make sure that every movement is part of the technique of moving. And remember that the Buddha teaches all 4 postures, not just sitting. The Goenkas are the ones who do all sitting all the time. They don't even recommend doing it while you're lying down because they're afraid that if you lie down to do meditation, that's an excuse for just taking a nap. And so they will up 2, 3, 4, up 2, 3, 4.
yeah.
To where in fact everybody's going to lay down to go to sleep at night. Why not meditate then too?
Yeah, I've actually been doing that. It's in my opinion it's a better use of your time than anything else you could be doing at that point.
Mm. It's nice to lay in the bed with nothing to do and no place to go and keep bringing your mind back to the present moment, back to the bed. Be here right now. Take a deep breath. Yeah, to practice while we're in bed. And by doing that, then sleep will naturally come. Not much dreaming. So, in reality, the natural method becomes more and more natural with every little turn. It's still all of the formal practice, but we take the edge off of everything.
Huh.
An example would be that, okay, so your back is hurting right now. Which is better, to suffer or to not suffer? Well, the whole point is to not suffer. So let's see what we can do intentionally so that we can stand up and relieve the tension in the back that was brought on by the sitting posture. And when we finish that, then we can sit back down. Now, the question is going to be how long can you sit the next time before the tension comes back in the back? You might have to stand up a couple, three times during this particular practice session. That's okay. Nobody's sitting there with a clock or a timer saying, I saw you move, I saw you move, I saw you move, I saw you move, and clicking it off. I do not know why Buddhists become such church ladies with each other, or think that all of the other practitioners are such church ladies like you find in the Western churches.
Mm.
Because the whole point of the practice is for you to find freedom with your own mind. And yet here we are thinking that we're being judged by others, not understanding that those kind of thoughts are suffering. So if you feel judged by, because they haven't told you whether they're judging you or not, so why are you putting the face on them? In fact, they don't even know when you're sitting. Nobody's watching you. Do what you want to do.
Yeah. Although it is important to also cultivate the ability to sit for long periods of time uninterrupted, right? At least that's what I always thought.
That's not necessarily the case. It depends. For instance, if by doing such a practice you're coming out of suffering more and more and more, then that practice is conducive. If, however, by sitting longer and longer and longer, you become more and more of an asshole, then what's the point of doing the sitting meditation?
Yeah.
And in fact, that happens. Why does it happen? Because the students are practicing too hard. They're wanting too much. They're disappointed with their practice. They're not getting fulfillment. Hmm?
Yeah.
So, another way of working with this then is that rather than making it a goal, make it an enjoyment because there's an in between spot. And a really clear example, let's use music, learning how to play the piano. It doesn't matter how technically proficient the child gets. If the child only is playing the music that the teacher and mom wants her to play and only playing it exactly the way that she's told to do by the teacher and the mom and is not enjoying the music that she's playing, how long do you think she's going to continue playing the piano after she's away from mom and that teacher? Not much. She doesn't enjoy playing the piano. She might have some technical skills, but her heart's not in it. So, what you need to do then is instead of looking for cracking up the hours, look for the enjoyment.
Yeah.
And part of the enjoyment is the toughening up that we have by, I can do this. I can sit. I can sit for a long time. So the benefit is already coming right there, is that you can sit. Not that you're going to gain some benefit from it later. That if you can sit 2 hours now, what good is it to sit three? The question is, well, it depends upon what you're doing in that third hour. If you're drudging it through, wishing the bell would ring, thinking that you can do it 3 hours in a row because you were able to do it 2 hours in a row, and now you got a bunch of students coming in and out, and they're watching, can you do 3 hours? That third hour is absolutely a bunch of crap. All right? Because you're not enjoying it. You're toughing it out because you don't want to lose face. So all of the bad aspects of it are there. The best thing for to do is to get up right then in the middle of it. Because why? Because you're not getting any benefit. So going back to that point of there's a certain amount of toughening up that you want to do, but with that toughening up comes, let us call it a noble kind of pride. a pride that you will eventually have to deal with. It is based in conceit, but it does have the enjoyment of I can sit. Now, not look how hard I tried, but look how successful I am, which is a different position. And the success also has to have joy in it. So you become pleased with your success, almost a little bit proud of being able to sit for long periods of time, joyfully enjoying it.
Yeah. So it's not skillful to extend the amount you're sitting if it's becoming less enjoyable. So it's like the enjoyable part has to be there, and extending the amount of time you can sit joyfully, that's skillful. But kind of sitting joyfully for half an hour and then kind of hating the second half hour, that's not getting you anywhere.
Well, it got you 30 minutes of joy.
Yeah.
That second half was kind of wasted.
Okay. That's actually a good a good way to think about it. Like learning to enjoy it for longer periods of time. It's
Exactly.
more
That's
joy
what
to
I'm
go
inviting
around.
you to do. Exactly.
Yeah.
And use what tools and skills you need, even to the point of saying something like, aha, I see the mind is tired now. Let's take a whole bunch of deep breaths and see if we can revitalize that turkey.
Yeah. I think I've been kind of falling into that mentality of not wanting to lose face, because let's say you set a timer for an hour, but then after 30 minutes you're in that just toughing it out spot, and I feel like I set this timer, I better well finish it. But
I would say that's more German than that is Buddhism.
yeah, I've had success with bringing myself back to like the more enjoying, um, or to be more filled with enjoyment, um, just by recognizing that one thought of I don't like this, I wish the session would end, doesn't mean that that has to go on. I that's also a hindrance I can throw out at least
Hmm.
sometimes, and get back into that in the correct to correct attitude. Yeah.
That's right. That's good. Yes. Please start watching that you can change your focus. And I can understand how students read Chuladasa and get out of it what you've gotten out of it. That there's nothing wrong with the way that he writes it, but there is ways that students interpret it so that they're not getting best benefit out of it. And part of that has to do with the fact that it's a structured book. Now, I do not know how to write a book that's not structured. I don't think that the book publishers will take a draft on. Well, I'm going to write a book, but I don't have any chapters.
It's like one big block of text with no headings.
Yes, one big block of text with no headings. Or maybe you can just, divide it up from time to time saying natural method chapter 1, natural method chapter 2.
Yeah. Every chapter is just called the natural method.
Exactly. Never mind, start again. Never mind, start again.
Yeah.
Well, I think that this has been really productive. This has been a good, so you've got kind of a new direction that, yeah, nobody's watching you. And if you think that they are watching you, they're probably not thinking about you the way that you're thinking about you.
Yeah, I'm sitting by myself anyways, so there's no one there. It's
No one
kind of
there.
not wanting to lose face in front of myself or something. It's almost it's almost a self-punishing attitude. It's almost like you got yourself into this, now you have to suffer through it. And I can see that's not entirely productive.
Yes, I've heard that the expressed it with the following expression: "Well, you made your bed, you have to lie in it."
Yeah.
The answer is okay, I will, but I'm going to make it again first.
All right, good.
you don't have to you don't have to suffer through it. That in fact that's an important point. Start looking for that change from the point in time when you're actually enjoying what you're doing because you see it's the right thing to do into doing it because you think you should do it. And that there will be suffering involved with it because you're doing because you should do it, because you're following somebody's rule or you're following a rule that you misinterpreted from someone.
Yeah, that's good.
Watch that point. When is it good and when does it start going south for you so that you can become aware of that point? And
Should I
generally
do
it's
anything at
because the
that point?
mind, yeah, well, understand that that's possibly the point when the mind's getting tired.
Mm.
And so that's the time to re energize, to start taking a lot of deep breaths. You might even want to stand up at that point in time, whether the back is hurting or not.
Yeah, I really don't enjoy meditating while standing. It's I know it's very skillful for dealing with tiredness or dullness, but it's really unpleasant to me. Just from a like, it almost immediately creates a lot of tension for me just standing.
Okay, here's something for you. Um, let's take an example, say 10 minutes. When you're out in life, do you ever have to stand in line, say for a ticket to something? Stand in line at the bank?
Yeah,
Okay. Does standing in line have the same quality as standing meditation?
no.
Well, what's the difference?
I guess you kind of move around, like maybe subtly shift your weight from one foot to the other, maybe take a little step to kind of relieve the tension.
Ah, exactly so. So people stand in line mindlessly, and then they shift their posture around based upon tensions or sufferings that they're only partially experiencing. Okay, so now we've got something to look at now. What would it be like for you to do standing meditation while you're in line? With the idea that standing meditation is the idea of finding um, a way. I'm looking for more than solitude, but not moving, just standing is actually um, less wasteful of energy than the people who are moving around to avoid the experience of the tensions in the body. So by standing for a short time, and when I say a short time, you don't stand in line for long. Even if people are standing in line for hours waiting for a store to open, they're not standing. They're normally sitting. But if you're standing, you stand for a few minutes. Okay. So that time that you're standing, whether you're standing in line or doing it in standing meditation, look at the places in the body that feel with tension and then mentally relax them so that you can relax. Soldiers stand at attention all the time, but they do it full of tension. But they can do it. The question is, can you stand and be relaxed? You can by relaxing the places that have tension.
Mm.
So basically, standing and sitting, they're the same, but Buddha does include standing meditation simply because there are occasions when we have to stand in line for things.
Okay, that's good. I'll experiment with that.
Okay. Something to play with, exactly.
Yeah,
The natural method, we don't give hard rules, we give you play toys.
yeah, yeah. It's pretty enjoyable.
So
All right.
learn to play with the body so that it can stand still.
I'll report back on my success with that.
Good. Excellent. All right. Well, is there anything else we need to cover today?
Um, Maybe you could say one or two sentences about if there's anything you think I should focus on in my practice, or if that. So my focus right now is kind of trying to extend the periods where I'm like openly aware of the breath without kind of clamping down on it. So it's for me right now, it's about time. It's like staying in that place without getting knocked off.
Yes. Okay.
If maybe you think
That's
there should be another focus or an additional element, or
stay relaxed.
yeah.
Enjoy what you're doing.
All right, sounds good.
That's not so easy sometimes.
Yeah.
But never mind, start again. All right, well, we'll see you later. Meanwhile, we'll post this one soon enough,
All right.
this video. All righty, bye-bye.
See you next week.